today. Some of you might know that Aristotle wrote physics first. Then after physics, he finished writing physics, he wrote psychology, which is called metaphysics. If you go into Latin, after physics comes metaphysics. Now, today, all of you will get excited when you hear the word science. Supposing you hear wellness, Noni, you don't get that much excited. The minute you say science, you get excited, as if science is a thing. You know, we have so many scientists of repute and things like that. But if you go into science and see what's happening right from the time of Roger Bacon, then Francis Bacon, then Galileo, then Darwin, and the present neo-Darwinists who are trying to sell Darwinism to the world, led by a man called Richard Dawkins, down to the present era, you will find all that they said has been proved wrong. This is the beauty of it. So, anything that changes is called science. Anything which does not change is called religion. Did you get that? Actually, there was a case against creationists and scientists in the federal court in America. This was about 10 years ago. The scientists said religion is nothing. It has nothing to do with science. Science is something which is what we do, and it's very important. Following that judgment, I wrote an article called Science is What Scientists Do. I captioned it in Dutch. You can get it in the internet. Wetenschap is what wetenschappen doen. Science is simply what scientists do. And what kind of science are we now doing? That's very important. Before I go there, I will give you a real life story. This is not a story. This is not a myth. This is what happened. There was a scientist couple in London who had only one son. This boy was 19 years old. I won't tell you the names. This boy had a peculiar disease, which we doctors in our Latin jargon say chronic fatigue syndrome. The boy couldn't get up in the morning. He has no enthusiasm in work. And eventually he loses all his muscle power. And he was bedridden, to cut the long story short. The father and the mother, quote unquote, both scientists, took him round the scientific world searching for a cure. The boy was going down. One day, one fine morning, a family friend walked into their house and they were having tea together. This boy was in bed in the room, but the room door was not closed. So the father and the mother were talking to this friend over a cup of tea, and the friend said, I have a treatment for your sons. He was not a doctor, he was not a scientist, he was a lay person. And the father said, what is that? Tell your son to go out into the garden and hug a tree for 1 hour every day. Both the father and the mother laughed at the suggestion. This fellow is an unscientific nincompoop who doesn't know what science is. Hugging a tree, will it cure my son? So they laughed at it, they had the tea, they all laughed, and the friend went away. But the boy had heard it. In his bed he heard it. So he said, after all he was desperate, he was going to die. So he said, I'll do something. So next morning he got up at 4 o'clock before the parents had got up. It was summer, so he went out to the garden and hugged a tree. He hugged the tree every day, or Chada Saab must have also been there. And he hugged and hugged and hugged. After a month, the boy started getting up in the morning, walking and talking. Then the parents were nonplussed. What must have happened to my son? So they wanted to see what he is doing. So they also got up very early one day. And they found their son getting up at 4 o'clock, going out to the garden and hugging the tree. And that, to cut the long story again short, completely cured the boy, and the boy is back to normal now. Now the scientist father has written a book for all of you to read. The book's name is Blinded by Science. Blinded by Science. And the author's name is Matthew, M-A-T-H-E-W, Silverstone, S-I-L-V-E-R-S-T-O-N-E. Matthew Silverstone's book gives you a beautiful history of this world of science. Now I come to our science, medical science, because we are interested in human beings, you are interested in wellness, illness, health, illness, and what have you. Let me tell you a small, very important message, and that is, all that we call as medical science today, I am repeating the word, all that we call as medical science today is nothing but falsehood, mystery, and I may even say sorcery. What we are doing is the present reductionist science, treating the human body as a machine and treating the human body like a mechanical machine, like a motor car. Supposing the heart is not all right, I think I can replace a heart from someone else. Like if your carburetor goes out in a car, you put a new carburetor. But remember, after you transplant the heart, the man doesn't become normal. If anything, he becomes more abnormal than what he was before. Probably you don't know what the inside story is all about. We put into human beings hundreds and thousands of chemicals. Just as you agricultural scientists put thousands of chemicals into plants to protect them from the pests. Do you know the result? An American child now, a newborn American child, if you took a cord blood and analyzed it, has 250 deadly cancer-producing chemicals from pesticides as it is born. Why? Even the mother had the same chemicals in the body. And the whole world has this. And we say we live on fruit and vegetable. Every fruit has got poison. Every chemical has poison. Every vegetable has poison. You will probably eat an egg, which when I was young I used to say it's whole food because it's everything in it. It can grow into a chick. But today you take an egg which has got so much of hormones in it because they want to make more money quickly. If you want to make a chick into a bird on the table, normally it takes about 6 weeks to 12 weeks. If you want it in 3-4 weeks, you have to give growth hormone into the chick. And if you gave growth hormone and the chick goes faster, the chick gets a lot of diseases. To prevent that, they load it with antibiotics. So today the egg that you get in the market is a combination of deadly antibiotics and hormones. And you take that. All of us eat the egg in the morning. What happens is, all of us have these antibiotics in small doses. And they start developing resistance against the germs. Germs start eating the antibiotic and living on it because it is a small dose. And we have now got germs in the world which can kill all of us without any problem whatsoever, which we call as multiple drug resistant germs. You take, for example, tuberculosis. In the 50s, India had about 2.5 lakhs to 3 lakhs of tuberculosis patients. If we had not imported the sparsely available anti-tubercular chemicals, today we wouldn't have had tuberculosis at all. But what is the result today? India is one country where the largest number of multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis patients are going about. Until they die, they will spread this germ all over the place. It may be a bus, it may be a plane, it may be a train, it may be a market. Any one of us going there, and if we get these germs, and if our immune system is not good, you and I will get also multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. This is a result of this science called reductionism. You divide this world into bits and pieces and then look at the piece and then try to project it on to the whole. Please remember, the whole need not be the sum total of the bits. There is something more to the whole than what the bits make. There is a saying called, you can grasp more than what you can assess. You can experience much more in this world than what you can measure. I'll give you an example. Now, Peter always talks about love. Love, I love you. I ask Peter as a scientist, now a galaxy of scientists are sitting in front. Now let Peter measure love. And what cannot be measured is not science. Mary Curie said, I quote, science is measurement measurement is science. So what can you can't, there's no love. Now ask a young boy or a girl who are in love. Ask them whether there is love or not. Now you ask them to measure that love, they can't. But they can feel that love. Similarly, a lot of us believe that religion and God don't exist. Only science exists because science cannot measure God. I give them a simple analogy. How many of you have seen the wind? An American poet, she writes, her name is Christina. And Christina writes so beautifully, who has seen the wind? Neither you nor I. But when the trees bend and dance, the wind is passing by. I have translated into God. Who has seen God? Neither you nor I. But when man is in trouble, he feels God. And that's why today, the present science, the science of holism, what's called quantum physics, it has not excluded God from the universe. The greatest curse of science started in the year 1672, when a young boy who was supposed to be a mathematical genius, whose name is René Descartes, in France, proclaimed to the world, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. So he said, there is nothing beyond that. I think, therefore I am. Nobody created me. I am created because I think. But where was he to think before he was created? He never answered that question. Nobody ever answered that. But this was taken as dividing the thinking part, what they call the mind, and the other part into two separate things. So mind was divided from matter. Did you get that? The first division of mind and matter, or the first division of this universe, started in the 17th century, early part of 17th century. Right from that day till 2012, that is 23rd of March 2012, science cuts this world into bits and pieces. But this science died nearly 87 years ago, to be very precise, in 1925. When a great scientist, whom your textbooks describe as the greatest scientist and the greatest brain, etc., etc., his name is Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was teaching in the Zurich Polytechnic, and in the class was sitting a young boy. 1925 was the year. The boy's name was Werner Heisenberg. He was just about 24 years old, and he got up in the class and said, "Sir, you are talking through your hat. What science you are describing is not science at all, and you are wrong." Can you believe what happens to a student who gets up in the class of a Nobel laureate physicist, taking the class on relativity theory, and telling him in the class, open class, that you are wrong? Have you ever experienced that? If your son or daughter were to tell the professor, a great professor in the class, that you are wrong, what would happen to that? The boy became an outstanding student. You know, outstanding, standing outside the class. For how long? For 25 years. Year was 1925. Einstein died in 1955. For 30 years, Werner Heisenberg was an outcast for science. And it's in the year 1956, Werner Heisenberg gets his Nobel Prize. The only Nobel Prize worth its weight in not gold and diamond, worth the gold in the whole world. But that is what changed science completely. Where he said, certainty, reality. We talk about reality. Oh, reality in this world is like that. What is reality? There is nothing called reality. The world has no permanence at all. Did you understand that? To understand this is difficult. World has no permanence at all. World is Maya, in the words of Shankara, which is absolutely scientific even today. And the greatest scientist after Werner Heisenberg was a man called Hans Peter Dior, who recently we had brought him to Chennai, and Karthikeyan Sab was there to listen to him. And Hans, who became the director of the Max Planck Institute after Werner Heisenberg, when Albert Einstein died, Hans found out that matter and energy are the two faces of the same coin. In other words, there is nothing called matter It's all energy. So, which means now science has come to think of a different thinking. So far, science says, I am an observer, you are the observed. What do they do in science? The scientific thinking, scientific research till now has been to look at an object and cut it from you. Newton, we say, is a great scientist. He was calculating the movement of the planets. And while he was calculating the movement of the planet, what he did not take into consideration is his own movement. As he was measuring, he was moving, which he did not take into consideration. So all Newton's laws of the world, Newton's laws of various things, are not accurate if you go to the smaller and smaller levels. Well, Newton's laws are all right for flying a plane, building a bridge, or building a building. But when you come to the subtleties of life, what really matters is matter and energy are the same. In short, there's a nice word in German language for this. Word is called Wirklichkeit. Wirklichkeit is simply meaning a drama. This whole world is a drama. Now I see all of you. That is reality, right? You all agree with me that you all exist? Yes. Now I close my eyes. What is the reality? None of you exist. Now I look separate from you. But if you really look at it and I close my eyes, we all are energy. Now go back to Matthew Silverstone's son who hugged the tree. Tree is energy. And each one of these energies have frequencies, different frequencies. Like for example, you have your mobile phone. You ring up a particular number. The electromagnetic energy here vibrates something in the universe, which scientists call as ether. But in fact, there is no ether. It is just a vacuum. So there is a vacuum. The minute the vacuum gets the vibration, the energy changes into ripples. Within seconds, your friend in San Francisco or London or in your house or in UP, the same vibration goes to his mobile phone, which converts that again into electromagnetic energy, and his phone rings. Now in the human system or in this universe, there is something else where you don't even have to have this electromagnetic energy. I sit here and seriously think of Peter. I say, I must now talk to Peter. Something very urgent. If I don't talk to him, there's some disaster going to happen. But I can't contact Peter at all. Peter is not reachable on the phone or by anything. You would be surprised. Within minutes or seconds, you get a message from Peter, either as an email or as a call, or he will come and see you. This is called teleportation. Teleportation is a new concept in physics, which is transfer of information from one end to another end, irrespective of the distance, without any communication facilities like a wire, wireless, telephone, radio, or television. In the human body, the same thing happens. Let us say, now I suddenly pull out a pistol and aim at you. You didn't expect me to have a pistol. So I have a loaded pistol, aim at you. The minute I aim at you, you will be surprised. If you look at your underwear, you already pissed there. You're so frightened that I'll kill you. Now, in our conventional science of reductionism, how we explain that? The light goes to the retina. Retina then stimulates the posterior cortex. Then it goes down the nerves and it goes to your bladder and the bladder relaxes. It takes time. No. Gun shown, you piss. Your bladder relaxes. Because it is teleportation. What you see here gets converted into every cell of your body. I will come to the fact now. What is matter? Human body is only energy. We have been treating human body as a machine with different chemicals. No, human body is a machine, but it has no matter inside. It is energy. Today, we can photograph a human body because every single atom in your body sends out a photon beam. So we have a camera called the biophoton camera. We can catch it. And when you catch it, we can show you that you are a happy colony of trillions and trillions and trillions of individual human beings. They are called your cells. And they're jumping about. They're all energy waves. And they're so happy that they dance in synchrony. just as these girls now danced, inside you, every second, 50 trillion people are dancing. When they are unhappy, you get illness. So what is happiness? Happiness is a state where you don't hate nobody. That's why I always tell Peter, Anandame Arogyam. Health comes from happiness. And happiness is not a mirage. A lot of us think, I'll be very happy when I become the director of agriculture. Or I'll be happy when I become the Prime Minister of India. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I build a house. Or I'll be happy when I get my daughter married. No. Find out, are you happy now? If you're not happy, you're not going to be happy anytime. If you're not happy now, you obviously are in conflict with someone else. Always ask yourself, why am I not happy? You must have some idea in your mind which is going about and making you unhappy. Now today, I will give you an example of another good example, not again story, another example of an Indian who became a great scientist. He is from, actually, I think, Bengal. His name is Mani Bhaumik. Mani Bhaumik. Bhoumik. Mani was born in Bengal in a small place called Tamluk. Tamluk is a small village. And he was born to poverty. His father was a school teacher, pre-independence, who was working with Gandhiji. So the police, British police, were after his father. So the father could not come home. This boy lived his life in penury. Sometimes the whole day they didn't eat anything. And Peter's fruits were not available those days. So he didn't eat anything. And if he ate something, his granny and his mother were looking after him. Somehow or other, this boy survived. Many times the police came to kill them, but they survived. And when the boy became a little older, he was a genius in mathematics. So the local school teacher picked him up and took him to school. And there, his mathematics papers could not be understood by the teacher himself. So somehow or other, to cut the long story short, he got a scholarship to do his MSc in mathematics in the Calcutta University. In the Calcutta University, he had Satyendra Nath Bose as his professor of physics. You probably have heard of Satyendra Nath Bose. Satyendra Nath Bose was such a great physicist that his contemporaries in Germany, like Derrick and others, found out that Satyendra Nath Bose had done so much in quantum physics, they called the particle called bosons. You must have heard of bosons if you have studied physics. Now Satyendra Nath Bose encourages his boy, gives him money, and then sends him abroad to Paul Derrick. To cut the long story short, he gets his PhD and postdoc at the UCLA University. And this boy finds out something. He ultimately discovers what is called laser. And he finds out that laser can work in cold temperature, room temperature. And he is the one who is giving you that new surgery that we do on the eyes instead of the spectacles, LASIK, LASIK. That LASIK surgery was initiated by Bhaumik. And for finding that out, Bhaumik suddenly becomes rich. The LASIK company hires him and gives him a lot of shares. And Bhaumik in the next 10 years becomes so rich that he almost has about 10 girls dating him. 4 of them are film actresses from Hollywood. And he buys a palatial house which is called Bhaumik Palace on the Beverly Hills. And then, do you know who all come to his house for food? President Clinton, Reagan, Bush, they were all his guests. And he makes so much money and he goes on doing so-called research. One fine evening, after the guests had all gone, he had a huge house. His house had an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Bhaumik alone was sitting there because all these 10 girls left him. Because Bhaumik found he can't be a husband for any girl. He lived with them for 3-4 years and then left them. Last one was a very powerful actress. She also left him. At that stage he sat there and said, "Who am I? Bhaumik. I was born to penury in my country and today I am the richest American. And what have I done? I have done what is called science. And what is the science I have done? I have destroyed the conventional wisdom. of holism. So he converts himself completely into a mystic. Doing the so-called work he does, he becomes a mystic. And he has written a book for all of you to know what matter is, what this world is. The book's name is Code Named God. Code Name God. And the author's name is Bhaumik. And Mani Bhaumik, M-A-N-I-B-H-O-U-M-I-K, Bhaumik. And the book's name is Code Named God. In this book, he so beautifully takes you from one end to the other end, saying, if you keep God inside the holistic thing and then develop a holistic science of matter and energy, where everything is energy, including God, you will not have to exclude God outside at all. And you don't do science with an object cut off from the subject. You are a scientist and you look at the world with you inside it. And that is called the holistic science. Now I bring you back to health. If you want health, you must look at the human body as a whole. Not only human body as a whole, human beings as a whole. Now when once I recognize that I am a part of all of you sitting here, I am a part of this whole universe, you will be surprised that I am a part of even a worm or a bird or a creature. Then there is no human conflict in the human mind. Where is the mind? Mind is in every body cell. In every single body cell, there is your mind. And that will make you very happy. And you have no enemies at all. And when once you don't have enemies, you have no diseases. We have one of the largest groups of diseases which we call as autoimmune disease. Do you know what is autoimmune disease? Your own body cells kill your own body cells. And do you know what's the treatment? We don't have any treatment. We give you steroids and you die a miserable death. But there is a man who completely recovered from autoimmune disease by just forgetting this world and laughing at everything. Not laughing at everything, laughing with everything. And this man's name is Norman Cousins. Have you heard of Cousins? Norman Cousins was a very famous American journalist who came up with an autoimmune disease called sclerosing spondylitis, ankylosing spondylitis, which is a disease which kills you gradually. And he was examined at the best places because he was the president's reporter. And they all said, you will die in 6 months' time. So instead of dying at home or in the hospital, he went to a hospice. You know what hospice is? It's a place where you die comfortably without the doctor's onslaught on you. One day, he was there, his friends were coming. A friend cracked a joke, a genuine joke. And Norman suddenly burst out spontaneously laughing. When he started laughing, he found his finger was moving. Not a part of his body was moving. If a fly sits on his face, he couldn't drive it away. And suddenly he found his finger moving. Then he ordered his friends. Those days there were no televisions. There were those 16mm pictures. So his friends brought a, the projector into the room, like the olden days. And they put the pictures, the various comedy pictures. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. 3 months he laughed. And then went out home and happy and healthy for the next 20 years. He has written a book for you. It's called Anatomy of an Illness. Anatomy of an Illness. The author's name is Norman Cousins. And this is a very book you can get in any shop because it's one of those Penguin classics. And a fascinating book which will change your life. So, I am now tying this great quantum physics, which is very difficult, to Peter. How do I do that? Peter discovered this without being a scientist of that grade and without going into quantum physics. He found that if you love everybody, you will be healthy. That is the basis of the wellness concept. Did you get that now? So, wellness concept is one that stimulates the energy in the atmosphere. All of us are happy today. All of us have come here to love one another. And you will be surprised. If a sick patient walks into this room, he will get cured. Just like that boy got cured by hugging the tree. The tree is a frequency. You are a frequency. I am a frequency. This mic is a frequency. Everything is a frequency. We are all energy. God is a frequency. We are different frequencies. So God is not somewhere else. God is inside. This is quantum physics. And I will take you to Upanishads. Aham Brahma Asmi. Now, most Western scientists, thinking scientists, take Upanishads as their main yardstick. I was in Germany recently. I went to one of the greatest scientists in Germany. In his office, we were talking. And the man had a board above his head. Do you know what he had? If you go to any one of our universities, what does the Vice Chancellor have? Knowledge is power. That's the board we have. And then we say, who said that? You know who said that? Francis Bacon. Because he knew, he was a lawyer. We call him a scientist, he was a lawyer. And with this legal language, he could send any one of his enemies into gallows. So he formed that formula, knowledge is power. And we are aping that for our students, knowledge is power. When I see that, I really feel like I would have said, wisdom is power. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. You know, some of us with knowledgeable are very arrogant. I know so much. I am so ready. I am a PhD. I am this. I am that. But if you have wisdom, you know, my God, I know nothing. I know nothing. And that's the stage man gets wisdom. And the poet said, knowledge dwells in heads replete with thoughts of other men. But wisdom dwells in heads attentive to their own. I told you about Werner Heisenberg when I started in 1925. When he propounded his theory of uncertainty. In this world, there is no certainty at all. I was talking to Karthikeyan just now. You cannot say anything about tomorrow because tomorrow doesn't exist. In quantum physics, there is no tomorrow. And quantum physics, there is no yesterday. There's only today. And that's what the poets wrote, present. Present is a present given to you. Today is a present given to you. Enjoy it. Now, tomorrow is not known. And when Werner Heisenberg was asked, which laboratory did you do your calculations of QP is not equivalent to PQ? Do you know what he said? He was 24 years old. He was a violinist. He knew the strings of the violin with the frequency, and then he studied frequency. And he said, Gedanken experiment. Gedanken experiment in German means, this is my laboratory where I did the experiment. Do you know what he used to do? When he got confused in the class, when people like Werner Heisenberg, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, Paul Dirac taught him physics, he got so confused. So what did he do? He went for meditation up the Heinz mountains. Would sit there for one day and meditate. Today we know in science, meditation is the thing that makes you a human being. You are an animal, but you meditate. I'll give you a small, simple formula for meditation, which will change your life. You sit quietly in a room or any place, whether it is a bus or a bus stand or airplane, airport, anywhere. All the noise will be there, don't worry. But sit quietly, comfortably, close your eyes. And a lot of things will be coming in the mind. Just forget about them. Don't do anything to stop them. Because thoughts are like that river. They flow down. And if you block them, you will be like damming the river and water will collect. Don't do that. Allow them to go. And then you simply sit quietly. Don't have to have any mantra. Don't have to watch anything. Don't have to watch a breath. Don't have to keep God. Nothing. Sit there. Sit there. And then quietly sit there. And then afterwards, the thoughts start getting less and less and less and less. You will get within 10 to 20 minutes, minimum 20 minutes, you get into a stage where you feel so happy. You become Peter in 20 minutes time. That is the genuine meditation that will change. And that is what changed Baumik on that night when all the guests, he had about 500 guests that day, starting from President Clinton down to all the celebrities in Hollywood. When they left him, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and he was alone in the house, sitting by the side of a swimming pool, which had the size of an Olympic swimming pool. Baumik went into meditation. And at the end of 20 minutes, he said, "You fool, Baumik, what are you? Have you forgotten yourself?" And that is where he writes that book for you, Code Named God. So friends, ultimately, I'll come back to where I started, and that is, everything in the universe is energy, God included in it. And scientists should stop looking objectively at things without forgetting his own subjective feelings. What the scientists do is, the subjective feeling alters their results at the end of the day. You may not believe it because we all believe in the results that were given now. John Ioannidis is a great medical scientist who was working in Stanford as a professor. He took 6 prestigious medical journals, medical science journals, top journals in the world. And 20 years he analyzed what they had published for before 20 years. And he found 99% of what is published is not worth the paper on which it is written, because it is already changed. That is science. I'll give you an example in physics, which is the greatest science. 1907, J.J. Thomson, who was the president of the Cavendish Institute in Cambridge University, got the Nobel Prize for saying that electrons are particles. 30 years later, his own son, J.G. Thomson, in 1937, says they are waves, and he also gets the Nobel Prize. Father says they are particles, son says they are waves. 1932, Schrödinger says they are neither waves nor particles. He calls them wavicles. He gets the Nobel Prize. 1925, Werner Heisenberg says there is nothing, you can't study this, and everything is uncertain. He gets the Nobel Prize. What do you call this? Science? That is why I started by saying science is something that changes, religion is something that doesn't change. But today, in 2012, we have come to a level where science is meeting religion, but not ritualistic religion, but the philosophy of religion or theology of religion, which I call as spirituality. What is spirituality? What Peter is doing is spirituality. Spirituality is simply caring and sharing. What is caring? Caring for others. What is sharing? Sharing with others. This is the essence of every religion. You go to Ishopanishad, Tena Tyaktena Bunjitaha. Rejoice in giving. If I can give you 1 rupee, I am very happy. If you give me 1 lakh of rupees, then I think, why not 10 lakhs? Why not 20 lakhs? Why not a crore? I am unhappy. But if I can give you 1 rupee, you will be so happy. I tell you, you are so happy. And that is called giving. And in giving, we get, Jesus said. Now the second thing, you go to Jesus, he says, in giving you get. And he says, it's not for thee alone, pass it on, pass it on. And that's called sharing. You come to Islam, Zukat. And you say, Allahu Akbar. Everything is, other than us, only God is different, we are all one. What a beautiful thought. One day thought, we'll teach this boy a lesson. So they went to the market and bought one of the most complicated jigsaw puzzles, having about 10,000 pieces, small pieces, which we put together becomes a world. So they came home and called the boy and said, look, today we will give you a question and you find the answer. Make this into a world. The boy disappeared with the box, 10,000 small pieces. And the parents said, for the next 1 week, we are happy. This boy won't bother us. Lo and behold, after 1 hour, the boy comes running back. Mommy, Daddy, I put the world. And they went to his room with amazement and they find the whole world is put together so beautifully. Then said, how did you do it? He said, very simple, Mama. Look at the other side. There is a man. I put the man right. The world became right. So friends, if you want to change the world, change yourself. Don't try to change others. Be the change yourself. This is a slogan I'll give you. Be the change to change the world. இப்போ கொஞ்சம் தமிழில் இதை ஜிஸ்ட் சொல்கிறேன். என்னமோ பேசிட்டு இருந்தார் இவர் இங்கிலீஷில், நீங்கள் நினைப்பீங்க. இல்லை, நான் சும்மா இதுதான் சொன்னேன். இந்த விஞ்ஞானங்கிறது ஒன்று வேறு, அப்புறம் கடவுளே வேறு, இது ரெண்டும் வேறுன்னு நீங்கள் நினச்சிட்டு இருந்தீங்க. இல்லை, எல்லாம் ஒன்று தான். இந்த உலகமெல்லாம் ஒன்று தான். நீங்கள் நானெல்லாம் பார்க்குறது வேறு இருந்தாலும் நம்ம எல்லாரும் ஒரே எனர்ஜி பீஸ். இந்த உலகமெல்லாம் ஒன்று. அப்போ நம்ம எல்லாம் சந்தோஷத்தில் இருக்கணும்னா நம்ம எல்லாரையும் அந்த அன்பு, அந்த பிரீத்தி, அந்த லவ் அதுதான் இருக்கணும். அதனால பீட்டர் சார் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்காரு? ஐ லவ் யூ, யூ லவ் மீ அண்ட் வி ஆல் லவ் ஆல் ஆஃப் அஸ். இதுதான் ஃபியூச்சர். ஆனால் கடைசியில் என்ன சொன்னேன்? இந்த உலகம் மாறணும்னா நம்ம மாறணும். நீங்கள் எல்லாம் சரியாகணும்னு நான் சொல்ல போகிறதில்லை. நான் நாளைக்கு சரியாயிட்டு நாளைக்கு நான் இனிக்கோட நல்ல பிஎம் எகிடேன்னா இந்த உலகமே மாறும். அது நம்ம எல்லாம் செய்ய வேணும். இதுதான் பீட்டர் சொல்லியிருக்காரு. இதுதான் இந்த வெல்னஸ் கான்ஃபரன்ஸ், இந்த வெல்னஸ் மூமெண்ட். இந்த வெல்னஸ் மூமெண்ட் மஸ்ட் சேஞ்ச் த வேர்ல்ட். அண்ட் ஐ am confident that it will do, because every small thing started as a movement. I'll give you an example of how slavery was the biggest business in the 18th century, 17th, 18th century. Slavery is the biggest business. Today, as just like oil or medicines are a business, slavery was a business. There was this young MP, young boy. And this boy in 1853 started a movement called Stop the Slavery Movement. His name was Wilberforce. Wilberforce. Wilberforce was 25 years old. He was already an MP in the House of Commons, and he started the movement in 1853 in Edinburgh City. Then elders called him and said, "Don't be a bloody fool. The whole economy of the West in England for those days, that was the British Empire, runs on slavery business. And you can't stop that because the whole country will collapse." But this boy said, "No, I am going to stop it." And that force, what Peter today started as wellness force, went on and went on for how many years? 50 long years. By the year 1907, the first anti-slavery bill was passed by House of Commons. And Wilberforce was an old man.